We are past the halfway mark in calendar year 2025, with today being the 2nd of July in this calendar year. And of course, for those of us who follow and monitor closely national issues and developments on the political front in particular, we know that we are essentially on the eve of general elections, with the general elections being due by September, with the outer mark being December of this year. The political scene is heating up. Quite frankly, many would say it has heated, and some disturbing developments are emerging. One of those disturbing developments, listeners, was the vulgar, desperate, and despicable attempt by my colleague in the Senate, Donna Scott-Mutley, to try and exploit and weaponize the work of the Integrity Commission. And in her vulgar and desperate attempt so to do, as she spoke on the political stump here in Eastern St. Andrew last Wednesday evening, following a tour of this constituency, St. Andrew Eastern, by the PNP last Wednesday, she took to the political stump and launched a broadside against the government, a broadside that we now know, and many of us knew then, was just totally inaccurate, totally false, absolutely baseless and misleading. Donna Scott-Mutley made the point last Wednesday that the government had shut down the parliament, as it were, for the current parliamentary term. So in other words, she charged that whereas parliament would have been slated to come to an end on the 1st of July, that the government had sought to have last Tuesday, being June 24, as the last sitting. That was entirely inaccurate. Her utterance was false, and Donna Scott-Mutley essentially misled the people of Jamaica. She should, as I have uttered in a press release earlier this week, as I have expressed in a press release earlier this week, Mrs. Donna Scott-Mutley should apologize for having entered false and absolutely misleading information into the public domain. It is very obvious that in a context where government is performing admirably, I wouldn't suggest that government is perfect, but this Andrew Holness-led Jamaica Labour Party government has been acquitting itself well in many, many areas of national life and in many, many aspects of governance. And because there is such little room for the PNP to maneuver, they are being boxed out in so many areas. They can't talk about crime management. They can't. They can't talk about poverty. They can't talk about jobs. They can't talk about the things that would usually be in play. And what they're seeking to do is to increasingly weaponize, yes, the sleight of hand of Kevin Stevenson and the curious and questionable actions of elements within the Integrity Commission. The same Integrity Commission which has separated from Keisha Prince Kamika, the former Director of Corruption Prosecution, and we cannot hear from them the circumstances under which that happened. In their annual report, they did not set out the circumstances under which that happened. and you don't hear from the Integrity Commission as to the circumstances under which Tamika Fiddler Blake separated from the Integrity Commission. You don't hear these things. But there are those who want to go up and down the country and present Greg Christie as though he's a paragon of virtue, and present Kevin Stevenson as though he's some paragon of virtue, when several actions at a minimum have to be deemed as very, very questionable. For example, the Integrity Commission, in the conduct of its investigation into the statutory declarations of Prime Minister Andrew Holness, at all material times had the Financial Investigations Division at its disposal. Pursuant to an MOU that is in place, it was able to engage the FID to assist it in undertaking its investigation and doing its work, as it did when it engaged the services of a quote-unquote independent international forensic accounting examiner. Yes? Why did Kevin Stevenson not avail himself of the Financial Investigations Division at that point in time? Why, having conducted his investigations, having availed himself of the services of a forensic accounting examiner, and that work being done by them and a report to the IC being made available, why after all of that did Kevin Stevenson not do either of two things? One, make a recommendation to the Director of Corruption Prosecution, or B, pass the matter on to the Director of Information and Complaints, Craig Beresford, for the Prime Minister to be appropriately certified. Why? It is very, very clear. Even babies being born as we speak at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital and elsewhere around Jamaica will see and can see for themselves that a clear design has ensued to keep the Prime Minister in abeyance, to have the Prime Minister languishing in abeyance on the matter of the certification by the Integrity Commission of his statutory declarations. And it is for good reason, and it is entirely appropriate that the Prime Minister has this matter before the courts. Let the court make a determination on this matter. We are a nation of laws. We are a nation of laws and institutions, not of men. Institutions should outlive men, should go on beyond men. Greg Christie is now off into the sunset, but we still have a nation to preside over. We still have a generation of Jamaicans to run this country for. We will be bequeathing Jamaica to them. Even those children now being born as we speak down at Victoria Jubilee Hospital. Yeah? So the truth of the matter is that, how can it be that the actions of persons who are mandated to be professionals and faithful, how can their actions be in question? It is very evident that by design, this business of referring, you complete your investigation, as Kevin Stevenson subsequently confirmed in Parliament when he, along with retired Justice Seymour Panton, attended upon the Parliament for a sitting of the Oversight Committee for the Integrity Commission. He confirmed that his investigation is at an end. So on what basis are you, at the end of the day, referring a matter to the FID? I am putting it to you, listeners, and indeed Jamaica as a whole, that it is quite suggestive of and quite indicative of an agenda and an effort on the part of Kevin Stevenson at the IC to cause the Prime Minister to languish in abeyance. So that, or let me not say so that, the effect of that is what we're seeing today and what we're having at this time. The Prime Minister has not been certified, and you can have jokers like Donna Scott-Mutley and like Conrad O'Brien on this very program and platform talking rubbish and seeking to exploit what Kevin Stevenson has done for purposes that are politically expedient for the PNP. You can't have a situation where you brought in an investigator from foreign, an investigator who may well have more resources than FID, and you also had the FID at your disposal. If you felt that you needed information that Andrew Holness was not providing, because Andrew Holness had no obligation to apprise you of his expenditure. If the Prime Minister spends on a vacation in Bali, or spends on, we call it, a podiatrist, whatever he expends his money on, that's his business. The Integrity Commission has no jurisdiction over the man's expenditure. You have jurisdiction over his assets, his liabilities, and of course, his income. His personal expenses is none of your business, Kevin Stevenson. And his lawyers instructed him, or not instructed rather, advised him appropriately to not furnish the Integrity Commission with those details. So if you wanted to commandeer and get from the financial system detail as to which club the Prime Minister go, which liquor him buy, and so on, then you go through the FID and do that. You had the FID at your disposal. But what did you do? You kept the Prime Minister languishing in abeyance so that clowns like Conrad O'Brien and jokers like Donna Scott-Mutley and others, especially Mark Golding, otherwise described as Marky G by Conrad O'Brien, who has a deficiency in speaking the English language. A clear deficiency. Butchering words, bastardizing the English language, and is here making a fool of himself presenting a program on national radio. He doesn't know the word picturesque, but picturesque, and several others, quite frankly. And those persons seek to weaponize the work of the Integrity Commission. And so, in her zeal to continue in that tradition, Senator Donna Scott-Mutley took to the political stump, as I said earlier, and sought to indicate and suggest that the government was had essentially brought the parliamentary term to an end last Tuesday, June 24, in a bid to thwart and effectively avoid having to table the annual report of the Integrity Commission. That was a blatant falsehood. Nothing go so and nothing never go so. On Friday in the Senate, Lambert Brown went a step further. Lambert Brown went on to suggest that House Leader Edmund Bartlett had essentially communicated to his opposition counterpart, Philip Powell, who is leader of opposition business in the House of Representatives, that the Parliament was essentially being closed 1 week early. That's where that speculation came from, based on what Lambert Brown placed on the table. But as Philip Powell himself and Edmund Bartlett have since confirmed, they had no such discussion, no such exchange took place between the two gentlemen. What actually transpired between Ed Bartlett and Lambert Brown is that Edmund Bartlett indicated to Lambert Brown that the sectoral debate, which was going on and had been going on for several weeks in the Parliament, was being concluded a week early. Not that Parliament itself was being ended a week early. It was the sectoral debate that reference was being made to. But because they want to jump to certain conclusions and exploit for political purposes, for vulgar and despicable political purposes, you heard Donna Scott-Mutley indicating that the government had essentially ended Parliament a week early in order to not have to table the Integrity Commission report, its annual report. Because what they want to do is to run with some rubbish about persons under investigation. And we have heard from the Gleaner. The Gleaner has indicated, not the Gleaner rather, the Observer, if memory serves me correctly, had indicated some months ago that there were, 5 PNP members who were under investigation by the IC. That's what the Gleaner, the Observer rather, indicated some weeks ago. And so, this business of trying to weaponize the work of the IC and its annual report, because the Integrity Commission has indicated that in addition to the investigations that it had been handling, there are 2 other parliamentarians and I believe a senator. I will not even comment as to whether that senator is me. I think the answer to that is very, very obvious. But I will not aid and abet this nonsense going on. Because the truth of the matter is that the Integrity Commission's laws were fashioned deliberately to preserve people's reputation. Because in the Jamaican context, as we saw with the Office of the Contractor General of old, if you have a situation in which a person's name gets called or there's an indication that they're under investigation, automatically that person is deprived of their good name. And as we have seen by virtue of the IC's own acknowledgement, that there are investigations that may not result or amount to anything. An investigation, listeners, is precisely that, an investigation. But we have to be practical at the same time. Because in the Jamaican context, especially in a politically charged environment, an investigation will be taken automatically to constitute something quite damning and egregious. We know how it is in Jamaica. If your name called upon something, or if you're being investigated for something, even if it no go so, in Jamaica, we have a way of saying, if it no go so, it near so, and therefore irreparable damage is done to a person. Why should I, as a senator, suffer irreparable damage because of an investigation? You spend your entire life building your reputation, and in one fell swoop, that good name and reputation to which you are entitled as a subject of Jamaican law, you should be divested of it in one fell swoop by the stroke of Kevin Stevenson's pen at the IC, and their actions there at the IC leave much to be desired and raises considerable questions. For example, how come Ronnie Lawrence started to operate as acting director of corruption prosecution, and the GG wasn't even so apprised, and Ronnie Lawrence wasn't so sworn? He wasn't sworn by the GG so to do, yet he commenced operations as acting director of corruption prosecution. The Integrity Commission leaves much to be desired. So those who want to view them as sacred cows for their political expedient purposes, we see through you and we know what you're about. Yeah? As Mota Baruka would say, we know where you're up to. I should perhaps come back to that track from Mota Baruka on the other side of this break. Stay with us here on Straight Up.
Contact News Talk 93 FM today via phone at 876-927-1660, extension 2475, or 427-9955. Email us at newstalk